The soft hum of city traffic blended with the clatter of a busy newsroom as Marcus Johnson leaned over his desk, eyes scanning the stacks of reports in front of him. He was a journalist, young, ambitious, and driven by a need to expose the truth, especially when it came to issues affecting his community. For months, Marcus had been investigating the mysterious disappearances of black teenagers from a predominantly white suburb just outside the city. The stories were chilling, youths vanishing without a trace, their faces appearing in local news stories only to fade into the forgotten corners of the city. But there was something strange about this pattern. Too many similarities, too many disappearances that didn't seem like random acts of violence. Marcus's instincts told him there was more to it. These weren't just isolated incidents, something was pulling these children into the shadows. The more Marcus dug, the more he uncovered. Files, interviews, and anonymous tips from sources who were too scared to come forward told the same story. The disappearances had begun shortly after a particular political figure had gained significant influence in the area, Senator Richard Waverly, a man whose reputation as a respected public figure seemed spotless. But the deeper Marcus went, the darker the story became. There were whispers of shady deals, of power grabs masked behind a thin veil of civility. Waverly was known for his support of black communities, his work for education and housing programs, but was it all a facade? Marcus's journalistic gut told him there was something sinister at play beneath Waverly's polished speeches and press conferences. He spent sleepless nights tracing the timeline of the disappearances, comparing Waverly's political rise with the escalating disappearances in the suburb. The facts began to line up in a way that made Marcus's stomach churn. It was too much to ignore. He had found his story. The man who seemed to have a perfect record was at the center of this web of terror. But Marcus didn't know how deep the rabbit hole went until he took that first step. The moment he published his findings, the world around him shifted. At first, the reaction was slow. The article made waves, sure, but nothing earth-shattering. The police denied any involvement, the city council dismissed his claims as exaggerations, and Waverly himself denied everything with a calm, practiced ease. But Marcus knew. He had the evidence. He had the names, the places, the dates. He had the story. And that's when the trouble began. Late one evening, as Marcus left the newsroom, he noticed something strange. The sound of footsteps echoed behind him. A car pulled up too close to the curb. A shadow lingered by the alley. His instincts screamed. He quickened his pace, heart pounding. The city had always felt like home, but tonight, the streets felt unfamiliar, dangerous, even. A chill ran down his spine as the footsteps grew closer. When Marcus turned to look, a man emerged from the shadows. He was tall, well-dressed, his face hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. "You should stop digging," the man said, his voice cold and deliberate. "You don't know who you're messing with." Marcus froze. Every muscle in his body tensed. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The message was clear. Someone was watching. Someone powerful. But Marcus wasn't about to back down. He had his story. He had the truth. And that was all that mattered. Little did he know, the truth he sought would destroy everything he knew about himself. The weeks after Marcus's article were a blur of fear and uncertainty. At first, he thought the threats would subside, that the political machine would settle down. But instead, they escalated. He began receiving anonymous phone calls, warning him to stop investigating. Strange figures began appearing outside his apartment. He could feel eyes watching him everywhere he went. Even his friends started to distance themselves, their faces full of concern but no words of support. Marcus was alone, and the fear was starting to feel suffocating. The tipping point came one night when he found his apartment ransacked. Files were scattered, his computer was missing, and all his notes on Waverly's connections were gone. Whoever was behind this wasn't playing games anymore. They were desperate to silence him. But Marcus wasn't ready to back down, not yet. He redoubled his efforts, going into hiding to continue his investigation, moving from one lead to the next, tracking down every clue, every whisper of truth. And then, it happened. A breakthrough. An old tape, hidden in a dusty corner of a defunct police station, had been labeled as a cold case. The contents revealed disturbing footage: Waverly, younger and more vulnerable, talking to several figures in a dimly lit room, figures whose faces were blurred out. The conversation was candid. Personal. "Your people don't understand the bigger picture," Waverly said, his voice laced with a cold, calculating tone. "I'll do whatever it takes to climb higher. To protect my future. My career." Marcus's blood ran cold as the realization hit him. Waverly wasn't just involved in the disappearances, he was orchestrating them. And the reason he was doing it? To advance his political career by sacrificing his own people, the very community he had once claimed to protect. The next morning, Marcus was gone. His apartment was abandoned, his phone off the grid. No one knew where he had gone or if he was even alive. The only thing left behind was a trail of broken promises and unanswered questions. But Marcus's investigation had done one thing no one had anticipated. It had made Waverly's dirty secret public. And that's when the walls closed in. The chase had gone on for weeks, and Marcus knew he couldn't run forever. Every lead, every connection had led him into a more dangerous web, and now, on the run, he was losing hope. He had burned every bridge he had, leaving him with only one option: go to the source, the one man who could end it all. It was an unexpected place to find himself, standing at the door of Waverly's mansion. The man who had once been a distant figure of power in his life now stood as the key to Marcus's survival or his end. Marcus knocked. His heart thundered in his chest, but he knew this was his only shot at the truth. The door opened. "Marcus," Waverly's voice was calm, even welcoming. But there was an edge to it. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Marcus stepped inside, and the doors closed behind him. They were alone now. Just the two of them. "What do you want from me?" Marcus demanded. "Why? Why did you do it?" Waverly stared at him, his eyes cold but calculating. "You wouldn't understand. My choices, they were necessary." "I'm your son," Marcus said, his voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "And you threw me away like I didn't matter. All for your career. You sold out your own people." Waverly's face hardened. "You think I didn't know what I was doing? You think I didn't realize the cost? I did it for power, Marcus. I did it for you. For your future." Marcus staggered back. His breath caught in his throat. "What?" Waverly's expression softened for a moment. "I couldn't be the man I was meant to be. I had to bury everything. Everything about my past, about my family." Marcus stared at him, his world crumbling around him. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The man who had haunted his every step for so long, the one who had betrayed him, was his own flesh and blood. The man who had sacrificed his community, his people, for personal gain, was his father. The truth hit like a tidal wave, sweeping everything away. The betrayals, the disappearances, the lies. Marcus's life would never be the same again. But now, the question was, what would he do with this knowledge? The world had always been shaped by the power of those who had hidden their truths. But Marcus now had the power to change the game. And he wouldn't stop until the whole world knew the truth.